Hello and welcome to Speak English with Christina, where you'll have fun becoming fluent in American English. Today is a very special day. You can see that I've got a special guest who I will introduce. But today is the 100th video of Speak English with Christina. Yay! And so I'm really happy to celebrate this with you, but I'm also very happy to celebrate it with my friend Géraldine, who is the creator of Comme Une Française TV, which is a wildly successful channel for learning French. She teaches Francophiles French in places all over the world, and she is the person who taught me pretty much everything I know about making videos and online courses. So it's basically thanks to Géraldine that Speak English with Christina exists. So Géraldine, thank you so much, and
you're welcome.
Welcome to Speak English with Christina. Now, whether you are doing, something big like making videos or a big project like learning a language, a part of that is making mistakes. We all make tons of mistakes. I've made lots of mistakes in my business and in learning French. Géraldine, you speak excellent English, but I'm sure you've made mistakes as well. Maybe just to start, can you share a funny story, maybe a funny mistake that you've made in English when you were learning?
Sure, I remember something. I don't think it's not a mistake, but it was a complete brain freeze.
Yeah.
I wanted to buy flour in a shop to make a cake.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the shop and the word flour just left my brain completely.
Yeah.
And so what I did is I described what I wanted to do, which usually works. And I said, I need a white powder to bake a cake.
Right.
And we went through every possible thing, like sugar and
baking powder.
Yeah, sure. And she listed me all these things, and I know it's like you buy it in a kilo bag, and you make cake, and it's like, oh my god, I'm so embarrassed because it's a common word, so people don't expect you to forget it. So I completely understand brain freezes when my students talk about them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have students as well when we're doing lessons, and they'll be like, I can't find the word. And I'm like, okay, that's okay, take your time, because it happens. Even in your native language, it happens.
So I've talked about my mistakes in English, but you've been living here for 15 years?
Pretty much, yeah.
Is there mistakes you still make?
Okay, I can't do masculine, feminine in French. There's just certain words I ask you or I ask Roman 20 times, is this masculine or feminine? And I remember one really funny mistake that I made. It was with the word for a vase. So a thing you put flowers in.
Sure.
And in French, if you don't know this, there's le vase and la vase. So it's masculine or feminine. And when it's masculine, it's the thing for the flowers. And when it's feminine, it's like... It's nasty. It's like the murky stuff that you see in swamps, I think. Like green stuff. And so my mother-in-law, so Roman's mom, gave me flowers, and I was like, oh, thank you so much for the flowers, I'll put them in la vase. And so instead of saying I'll put them in the vase, I was saying I'm going to put them in the disgusting slime. And so she just really laughed and thought it was terribly funny, and I was like, what? It's a vase. And I think I would probably still make that mistake today, so
And it's okay because people understand the meaning. There's no need to freak out.
Yeah, exactly. It's clearly, the context tells you, so it's okay.
Oh, you're very rude.
Yeah, or the person is just not making an effort, and in that case, I don't know, you don't want to talk to them.
Another question I have for you is, I know for French what it is, gender and all that, but what are the different mistakes that people make in English? I don't even know them because I very probably make them all the time.
I think probably the mistakes that the people they ask me about the most is pronunciation mistakes. Because a lot of people say, oh, we never learned this in school. we learned grammar, we learned vocabulary, but we didn't learn pronunciation. And so there are, I would say, maybe two big types of pronunciation mistakes you can make. One is, for example, with vowel sounds, like the long E and the short I sound. So, yeah, right. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So people, they want to say sheet and they say shit, or beach and bitch. So they can be very vulgar, in fact, without wanting to. It's just their pronunciation makes them sound vulgar. And another mistake people can make is by pronouncing every syllable in the word. A good example is like comfortable. In English we say comfortable, but if you look at it, it looks like it says comfortable. And the thing is, you think, oh, but it's the same word. But when Americans, especially if they hear you say comfortable or basically, they don't understand. And it can create very uncomfortable situations when you repeat something 3 times and then the person says, comfortable, and you go, oh yeah, that's what I said.
Make an effort.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, they don't make an effort. But so these are pronunciation mistakes that can really create either very uncomfortable situations or just some sort of breakdown in communication. And that's why, in fact, in my book, What the Foot, there's actually an entire chapter that's dedicated to pronunciation. And they often have links to videos like where the people can see how to position your mouth, because that's one of the most important things in pronunciation is position of your mouth. So yeah.
And it's very different from English to other languages because each language has its own position of the mouth.
Exactly.
And if you don't see it, it's very hard to make it.
Yeah, because there are sounds that just don't exist. And you can try to repeat, but if you don't hear it, you don't know what to do. And so you're like, but I'm saying sheet, it's the sound. And you're, no, it's not. And you have to know what to do. Yeah.
Yeah, we've all struggled with glass of water.
Yeah.
What am I going to ask in a restaurant when I arrive? But it happens, and it's real life. The waiter honestly doesn't understand what you're saying. You're trying, and I remember when I was in the US last year, I was so embarrassed because they couldn't understand what I was saying. And it's just, sometimes you just give up. You just tell your partner, just tell him that just doesn't work.
Right, yeah, exactly. So pronunciation is a big deal, yeah.
My next question after pronunciation is more about vocabulary, because when I teach students, some want list of vocabulary, and I usually say it's not a priority. So what do you think when everyone seems obsessed with vocabulary lists?
Yeah.
What do you tell your students?
I tell my students that kind of like what you say, that if you're trying to learn vocabulary, a list of individual words is just going to make it more difficult and more frustrating. And really what helps to make you fluent faster is learning chunks, which are expressions. So for example, I'm trying to think of one and now it's not coming to my head. But if you say something like, I know what you're saying, to say like, I understand. Or if you say something like, let me get that for you. And these little expressions that you can learn, just that you can memorize, are much more useful than just a list of individual words. To learn vocabulary in context, basically. And same thing going back to the book, there's an entire chapter which is called Chunks to help people to learn these expressions quickly, correctly, and they can just increase their fluency.
Yeah, I teach something similar. I tell them just learn the French you actually need in real life, and then we can go through nuances to answer a question, but in a way I would say, instead of learning vocabulary about words that you would never ever use. Yeah, exactly. Because this is what gives you fluency, speaking like people actually do.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point, because sometimes people, they think that they have to learn like the better word because it's more academic or like a higher level. And in fact, sometimes that can create problems because you say something and it comes off in a different way. For example, obliged. It does exist in English, but if you say someone like, oh, you're obliged to complete this paper, it sounds very formal and it can like create distance. Whereas we would just naturally say like, you have to, or you need to, or I need you to. And people don't realize that the way that they're using their vocabulary that maybe they learned in school can actually create barriers between the person they're talking to, and then they feel like, oh, I have difficulties meeting people or making friends.
But that's the opposite of what you learn at school, because I remember you would have better grades if you put more academic, super formal, literary words that no one would ever use. But it's frustrating because you learn something at school and someone teaches you the exact opposite, so you have to unlearn what you learned.
Yeah, because it can create again, just like situations that you don't want to create when you're speaking the language.
We're talking about, next I want you to talk about like false friends, because you talked about obliged, but this one is easy. It's not a bad one. In French, we have so many. Like for us, it's excited. If you translate it in French directly, it means that you're sexually aroused. So just don't use that. So is there some in English that I probably have no idea about that have this double meaning, oh, warning, you shouldn't use them?
One of the ones that I hear a lot, especially for my French learners, it's rendezvous. Because in French it just means like you can have a rendezvous, a meeting with your doctor or with your boss or something. And in English, we do have the word rendezvous, but it means, first of all, it means generally it's like a secret meeting. Like, we're gonna, talking, I don't know, with your resistance friends or something. We've got a rendezvous at 9 o'clock behind the building or something. So there's that, but it can also have like a romantic connotation. So if you tell your colleague, oh, I have a rendezvous with the director at 2 o'clock, you're not going to be talking about PowerPoints and figures. You're going to be doing something else. So it can be things like this, and often because it does make sense in the context. It's not what you want to say, but it makes sense. The native speakers, Americans especially, they won't necessarily correct you or ask for clarification. They just understood that you've got a romantic meeting with the boss when you just wanted to say, I have like a professional meeting. It can happen. I mean, sometimes people, if they feel comfortable with you, they may be like, oh, you're getting on with the boss. And then you're like, wait, no, that's not what I meant. And you can clarify. So it can create some misunderstandings again,
But hopefully people will understand that maybe you used the wrong word.
They might, and it's kind of hard to say like when they will understand it as a mistake and when they will just understand something you didn't want to say. So it's just better to correct the mistakes.
But maybe people who've traveled and learned another language would correct you, but others who wouldn't even know that you could not know the word would think it's maybe weird.
Totally. It's just an example. Like when we go back to the U.S. And when Roman is talking to my parents who, have mostly stayed in the U.S., they've always worked with Americans. And when Roman talks with my sister who has traveled to other countries and she's learned other languages, it's a totally different communication experience.
Absolutely. What about these mistakes? Because we said that some people might correct you, others might not. But when you're learning a language, you want to be as good as you can. So sometimes mistakes are paralyzing. So do you think it's a big problem specifically for English to make mistakes?
If you're speaking to let's say just native speakers in general, what we're really looking for is to understand you. So if you're making little mistakes, like maybe some little grammar mistakes, you're talking to your friends, it's not such a big problem. Because your friends will probably, they might laugh at you. They'll think it's cute. They'll think it's charming. Oh, it's so cute, your French accent or whatever. It's so cute the way you don't conjugate your verb correctly. They probably won't say that, but they if they can understand you, that's sort of the priority. And so people are often, like you said, paralyzed at the thought of making a mistake, but they just need to go and try it. And often the complaint that a lot of my students have is that Americans won't correct their mistakes.
French either. Either.
It could be both. It could be both.
French
yeah.
people might not correct their mistakes as well because you're just speaking. You're not there to just teach them the right way. So
Exactly.
maybe once or twice, but not all.
Yeah, exactly. And so like if it's in a, let's say, an informal situation, and if you're making mistakes but the other person can understand you, they're just going to say it's okay and they're going to continue the conversation.
But we talked about friends.
Yeah.
There has to be situations where you're kind of not allowed to make mistakes.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would say basically any kind of situation where your credibility is on the line.
Work?
Like work, for example. A lot of people, when they introduce themselves, they say, oh, hello, my name is so-and-so, and I'm working here since 5 years. Yeah. And it's understandable, but the person, let's say the colleague or the client who is in front of you, they hear that. And English in the workplace, it's a skill, like computer skills or like sales skills or presentation skills. And so these little mistakes are kind of a reflection of your capacity, or that's what people can interpret it as. So even if it's understandable, it does kind of diminish your credibility as, a competent professional. So that can be a little, you want to fix that.
Did you say start off the right foot in English?
Start off on the right foot, exactly.
So yeah, I teach something similar. Like if you start the conversation well, your confidence builds up, you look okay, and if you make mistakes after, it's not such a big deal.
Exactly.
But it's just like learning 2-3 phrases to introduce yourself properly. It will take you 5 minutes. Like I know because I read your book.
Yeah.
And my English is far from perfect, but a few things I was able to find a few things that I could correct straight away and change so much for me, because even if people are kind enough to go beyond my mistakes in English, I have to be serious.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And for people working in English, you have to speak as well as you can and correct everything that's easy to correct just by finding reliable sources.
Exactly. And that's really what the book is about, is like cleaning up the English. It's for somebody who has can already communicate, but they're making these little mistakes, but they really want to fix them because they know that something's just not right. Yeah.
And what I read in the book what was interesting for me is that we work together all the time. So I speak English, you don't correct me, I don't correct you.
Yeah.
I laugh in my head.
Exactly. You're like,
but like having them pointed out as the common mistakes, it was obviously mistakes I was making. So I was like, okay, that's true. I don't make this one. I don't care about this one because sometimes it doesn't suit what you're talking about.
It's like me with masculine and feminine. I've just given up on it.
Yeah,
I just accept it.
So having them pointed out as a learner was super helpful. So I even learned a few things.
Yeah,
so
okay, all good.
Cool.
Oh yeah, that's yay. I'm glad that I could teach you something. Yay. Yeah.
Do you have something else to add?
I would just say, like about the book, something that I'm really proud of, I would say, is that in fact it was like a collaborative project. All of the mistakes that are in the book are mistakes that come from members of the Speak English community. Like I asked them, I was like, what are the mistakes that you're always making? And I collected their mistakes, and then divided them up into different categories. So pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary, chunks, and expressions. And these are what have become the chapters of the book, in fact. So I'm, really excited that they're not mistakes I would imagine someone making. They're mistakes people have told me, Christina, I always make this mistake. Can you please help me? And that's the content of the book, basically.
Yeah. You cannot imagine the mistakes because we are the ones making them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard to know what's the most frustrating for people. And when someone says, like, I've made this so many times and I was so embarrassed, and you're like, okay, I need to help this person, but also other people who are probably making the same mistakes.
Cool. So should we tell people watching that to get the book?
I think that's a good idea, yes. So if you want to get the book, you can go to my website, which is ChristinaRebuffet.com. Just click on books, and you'll be able to get it. But I'll also put the link, the direct link, below this video, so you can go and pick up your copy today.
Cool.
All right. So I just want to say, Geraldine, thank you so much for being part of this video, but also for basically helping me to create my entire life as it is today.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, Geraldine.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.